and urging people to create systems that support marriage. A Qur'an that teaches you how to pray is the same Qur'an that teaches you how not to oppress. Spirituality, but no. So what version of Islam are we presenting today? One of the strongest pieces of evidence that the Madinan phase of Islam was about building systems is found in the very first public words of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spoken upon his entry to the city. These were words that reassured the anxious in such a concise way. And he said, as he was coming into the city, declaring his manifesto essentially, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ أَفْشُوا السَّلَامِ وَأَطْعِمُوا الطَّعَامِ وَصِلُوا الْأَرْحَامِ وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٍ تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ بِسَلَامٍ. He said, O people, spread peace, feed others, maintain family ties, pray at night when people are asleep, and you will enter paradise in peace. Now these words may initially sound like a list of personal good deeds that are detached from public life. In reality, they were the very first pillars of a Madinan order, principles designed to be translated into, listen, structures, norms, institutions. So look at the statement again with me, one by one. He said, Afshu salam, spread peace. This instruction is beyond just greetings and politeness. No, sallallahu alayhi wasallam was laying the foundations of a society that guarantees safety when he said spread peace. Mechanisms that prevent violence, legal structures that resolve disputes, institutions that restrain oppression, a public conscience that advocates for justice, spread peace, systems. The second statement, feed others, أطعموا الطعام. Again, that wasn't meant to be just a soft gesture of private kindness. It's a civilizational command as well to build an economy where hunger is seen as a failure. Basic needs are guarded. Starvation of people is resisted and fought against. We saw this in Madinan Qur'an of how wealth must circulate. Hoarding must be broken. Welfare must be organized. Financial relief must serve the needy without chaining them to interest, riba, systems. Then the third instruction, do you remember? وَصِلُوا الْأَرْحَامِ, maintain family ties. Again, this instruction isn't reduced to the occasional visit of a family member. But on top of that, it's safeguarding the family as an institution and urging people to create systems that support marriage, financial and social mechanisms that care for children, that care for the elderly, clearly defined responsibilities that prevent abandonment of the old, or the weaponizing of children when mom and dad are falling out. Again, not just a sentimental private instruction, but a structural one. Are you seeing it? And then the fourth command, وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٍ, pray at night when people are asleep. All of the commands that you just heard, they are anchored in salah. Those moments in the night when the servant stands before Allah, unseen by the world. These are the things that preserves the entire project. Without that grounding, structures lose their soul, institutions become hard, systems begin to decay. So, subhanallah, within a single generation, the same community that once whispered its iman inside of the house of Al-Arqam in Mecca was now delivering justice across Medina and across the entire Arabian Peninsula. And then within just 2 generations, Muslims had reached Damascus and Baghdad and Cairo, Qayrawan, Qurtuba, Persia and Rome, and it was carried by the astonishment of nations who witnessed a people, Muslims, who were principled, who were restrained, who were God-conscious, who were unbribable, impossible to purchase. They saw courts where non-Muslims could prevail against Muslims, where rulers whose garments wore patches, markets where fraud was disciplined, and learning that was opened beyond the gates of just privilege. They saw, listen, a model of life. They saw, take note, a system. That's Madinan Qur'an. So what about you and I? You're not a Khalifa. We're not drafting constitutions. We don't control armies or the central bank. Does the Madinan Qur'an still speak to you and I? Absolutely. Because the principles don't change. The scale does, but not the principles. So you may never lead a state. but you already lead something, a home, a classroom, a team, an advocacy group, and at the very least your own soul. So the question is, are Madinan values ruling those spaces?
This is a phone, a clock, a camera, a compass, a notepad, even a studio. We share pics and we make calls, but imagine it could be even more than that. Your teacher that corrects you and reminds you, who makes sure you never make the same mistake again. Memorization mistake detection from Tarteel, the smart way to memorize the Qur'an.
And this is exactly where our generation sometimes slips into the false idea that Islam is just spiritual, only private, something between you and Allah, detached from the structures that are shaping your children and your money, your choices, your ummah's challenges, its prisoners, its oppressors, its future. But Wahy revelation never allowed that split. It came down in Mecca to build the human being. Then it came down in Medina again to rebuild the world around that human being. A Qur'an that teaches you how to pray is the same Qur'an that teaches you how not to oppress. A Qur'an that corrects your aqeedah, your theology, is the same Qur'an that refuses to leave society in the hands of tyrants and predators. So you can't say, I'm spiritual, so I don't deal with systems, I'm just working on hearts. That's a foreign idea to our tradition and our Qur'an and our predecessors. Furthermore, when we look around today, we begin to understand why this truth that I'm sharing has become so urgent, so painfully necessary, because much of the injustice beneath which we live in is no longer the work of scattered villains or isolated tyrants. It's engineered. It's protected. It's normalized by systems. Systems that make riba almost unavoidable. Systems of education and media that really undo everything that we do in the masjid and teach at home. An entertainment machine that drills the soul in distraction, to help it lose seriousness, to mock modesty, to rewrite values, to live for appetite, nothing deeper. Systems designed to delegitimize and deplatform every righteous advocate and brave caller for justice. Then the iron fist of political tyranny where the world watches. Al-Aqsa, for example, suffocating as we debate which words are acceptable to describe it. So this is the age of structure. Oppression has acquired offices, budgets, experts, uniforms, algorithms, public relations departments, illegal vocab. It has become organized. It's professional. It's systematic. It's the word that keeps coming up. And this is precisely where much of modern da'wah reveals a bit of an imbalance. In many spaces, the response to the crisis is reduced to part of the Meccan Qur'an alone. So fix your aqeedah, purify your heart, be a better Muslim. Yes, of course, that's the foundation. That's the soil from which any Islah, reformation must grow. But when the language never expands beyond personal, spiritual, or theological repair, when there's no roadmap for Islah, beyond personal piety, no vision for how faith can confront injustice at scale, then you've got an imbalance. And we're kidding ourselves. Spirituality, but no systems. And we've seen in recent years what the opposite of that looks like. Systems with no spirituality. And that's just as bad. It creates an imbalance as well. And the ugliest form of power. We've seen it today. Lobby groups, political networks built on blackmail, exploitation, pornography, pedophilia, destruction of family life, any means necessary to maintain control. That's what happens when systems are there, but there's no Meccan Qur'an inside them. You may get efficiency, but you don't get righteousness. You may get strength, control, but you lose your soul, you lose your hereafter. So that's systems without spirituality. It's also just as imbalanced. Just as spirituality without systems is also an imbalance. So, Madinan Qur'an did not produce a faith that escapes the world, but a faith that reforms the world. And perhaps the clearest way to illustrate this is to look at two very different beginnings, two origins. Buddha was born a prince, raised in luxury, sheltered from pain. But when he finally encountered sickness and poverty and death, it shattered him, it broke him. So he turned away from society, away from responsibility, away from politics, away from power, and he went inward in search of personal enlightenment. And from that retreat emerged a tradition where salvation is often pursued through withdrawal. You know, it's the monk, it's the monastery, it's the mountain, the cave. So the world is abandoned in order to escape it. Islam began very differently. The Prophet ﷺ began with his retreat to the cave of Hira, looking for clarity in a corrupt society. But notice how revelation did not allow him to stay there. The command was immediate, قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ, get up and go on. And so from that moment, the cave became the beginning, not the end point. The path led straight back into society, into markets, homes, courts, media, treaties, conflict. So Buddhism is an example of something that moved from the encounter with the world into withdrawal from the world. Islam moved from withdrawal into responsibility back into the world. So what version of Islam are we presenting today? Is it the faith that ends in the cave, where spirituality and aqeedah, belief, become a form of escapism from responsibility? Or is it the Islam that was born in the cave, then descended back into the world with revelation in its hands and answers, solutions on its tongue, and the burden of Islah, reformation upon its shoulders? So here we are, we have come full circle, from hearts to systems, from belief to society.